All right, so section 3.3a is factoring trinomials. You guys have that in front of you. Yes, you have possibly seen this. Yes, you might be really good at doing it. Okay, but we're gonna kind of review this really quick. Okay, so here's the deal with these types of problems. You're normally given a problem that looks like this: ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? Normally you see ax squared plus bx plus c type of trinomial. Now, they're not always like that, but for this section, they are. And what they probably have taught you before is that they want you to do this using what they call the x method. Okay? So the way you do the x method is you're going to take your a and your c and multiply it there. Okay? And then you get your b value and you put it there. Okay, so a times c goes on the top. Your b value goes on the bottom. And then over here, you're going to have to put in some numbers that are going to multiply whatever those two numbers you pick. They're going to multiply to the top value, whatever it happens to be, and they will add to the bottom. I know that looks really complicated, but this is basically the easiest way that they can show you how to factor things. Okay, I learned it a different way. I learned it where you had to basically guess and check, which works great for me even now. But we are going to basically do this using the X method. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start off by doing number 2, okay? So number 2 right here for you guys. So x squared plus 13x plus 42. Now they want us to factor this, okay? They want us to factor this, so I have to figure out what a, b, and c are. So let me just label it. A is 1. B is 13 and C is 42. Okay, you can see that from the numbers right here. Okay, here's our A term, our B term, and our C term, right? A, B, C. Okay, so let me do the X method for this right here. So according to the X method, I'm going to get the two numbers A and C and multiply them together. So that's 42, right? 1 times 42 is 42. And then I'm going to get my B value and I'm going to drop it down to the bottom. So that's 13. Now I have to pick two numbers that multiply to 42, but they also add to 13. Now, just to kind of help us out here, 7 times 6. Because notice 7 times 6 is 42. 7 plus 6 is 13. Okay? So 7 times 6 is 42. 7 plus 6 is 13. So it does what it's supposed to do. They multiply to the top number and they add to the bottom. Now notice these are both positive numbers, right? I didn't say negative 6 or negative 7. So they're both positive. So all you have to do now to get your answer is you're going to put two sets of parentheses like this. Okay? Put the positive 7 and the positive 6 at the ends of those parentheses. So like this. Okay? And then all you have to do is put the letter that we're dealing with. Since we're dealing with x's, you're going to put an x here and an x there, and you're done. That's been factored. Okay? So again, you are basically taking the a and the c, you're going to multiply them together. That's how we got the 42. You're going to get the b value, and that's going to be put in the bottom of that x. And then you got to think of two numbers that multiply to the top and they add to the bottom. Okay? Once you get that, you put those two numbers on the ends of those parentheses and then just put the letter that we're using, which is x in our case, in the front, and you're done. Okay, so that's number 2. Now let's take a look at, unfortunately I don't see anything with the negative, but I guess we can work on one of those eventually. But let's look at number 6. Number 6. Okay, so number 6 says x squared plus 2x minus 48. Now again, list your A, B's, and C's. So A is 1, B is 2, C is negative 48. So make your x and multiply A times C. That's going to go on top. So that's negative 48. And then your B value goes on the bottom. That's a 2. So this is where your arithmetic comes into play. What two numbers multiply to 48 but add up to 2? So let's think of two numbers that multiply to 48 here. 8 and negative 6 would be the correct answer overall. Notice I'm going to first write this 8 and 6 because 8 times 6 is 48, right? But one of them has to be negative, which you said negative 6, which was correct. The way we figure it out is like this. If I do negative 8 times 6, that is negative 48, but negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. And that's not what I need. I need a positive 2. So then we just switch the negative over, right? So 8 times negative 6 is negative 48. 8 plus negative 6 is a positive 2. So this works great. I'm going to put a plus next to the 8 just to indicate that it's a positive number. And then I'm just going to put 2 sets of parentheses. Okay, the positive 8 goes here. The negative 6 goes there. And since I'm dealing with x values, I'm going to put x's in the front. And there's my factor. And some of you guys, like I said, we've done this before. They've shown it to you guys before. So this isn't anything that's like brand new. It should be something you guys can do and hopefully are able to do without a problem. So notice there's 4 problems you're supposed to be able to do for numbers 1 through 9. I did 2 of them. The other 2 I'm not going to do, but I am going to do like number 5, which I know is not required, but I want to make sure you guys see one with negative A values, okay? Even though they're not going to make you do them. Okay? Now this is what you guys have to do. And this is probably the easiest thing I've found that's possible to do with this. Some people, they just factor it out the way it is. They use a negative A, a negative 1, and a negative 55. But I always tell people, look, the best thing to make yourself do this correctly the first time, factor out the negative. Take the negative away from every term. So that means the negative x squared, if I factor it out, it's going to become an x squared, then a minus 16x, and a plus 55. And then only factor this, but do not forget that there is a negative in the front, okay? We're going to have to remember that negative at the end. So let me write my A, B's, and C's here. A is 1, according to the thing that has the squiggly line, right? B is negative 16, and C is a positive 55. So I'm going to do the X method for this. So A times C, 1 times 55, that's 55. And then the negative 16, the B, goes down on the bottom. So what two numbers multiply to 55? 5 and 11, right? 5 and 11. So let me write that down. But do 5 and 11 add up to negative 16? No. So what do the 5 and 11 actually have to be? They both have to be negative, yeah. Negative 5 and negative 11. Because negative 5 times negative 11 is positive 55. And it does add up to negative 16. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is the same like I've done before. I'm going to put those 2 sets of parentheses. I'm going to put the negative 5 at one end, negative 11 at the other end. I look at my letters. I have x's, so I'm going to put an x here and an x there. And if you say that that's your answer, you're almost right. What am I missing? The negative in the front, okay? Are we okay with these three so far? Again, this is supposed to be review, so I'm hoping that people are like, I've never seen this before in my life, okay? So hopefully that's not the case. But let's move on. Now, if you notice numbers 1 through 9, it just said factor each expression, but if you look at 10 through the rest, it says find the GCF of each expression, then factor. The GCF means that they must have something in common. Every term must have something in common. It might be a negative. It might be like a number 5. It could be an X. It could be something that they all have in common. So let's look at number 10. So number 10 has a 3x squared plus 15x plus a 12. Now, if you look carefully, they all share a 3. But they don't all share an x, but they all share a 3. So I'm going to factor out a 3. Okay, a 3 is going to come out. So the 3 goes out. I'm left with an x squared plus a 5x plus a 4. Okay, so I factored out the 3. So in other words, I divided everything by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 12 divided by 3 is 4. That's how we got the numbers on the inside. Now again, I'm only going to work with the squiggly area, right? But I am going to have to remember that that 3 belongs in the answer. Okay, so let's write down our A, B's, and C's. So my A is 1. My B is 5. My C is 4. Okay, so I got to multiply my A times C, that's 4. And then I get my B value and I plug it in on the bottom. What two numbers multiply to 4 that add up to 5? A 4 and a 1, right? A 4 and a 1. Now, positive 4 and a positive 1, because 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 plus 1 is 5, right? So again, I'm just going to get my two parenthesis sets. I'm going to write them down. I'm going to put a plus 4 and a plus 1. Okay? And then I'll put my x here and here. And then what do I have to do left? The 3, right? So the 3 will go here. Now this is if they have something in common. Sometimes when they don't have something in common, then we have to do something else. But we'll talk about that when the time comes. These do have things in common. Now, let's move on to, let's check out number 14 here. So number 14 looks like this. 2x squared minus 10x. What do they have in common? They have a 2 in common. What else? An x. So I'm going to take out a 2x. So a 2x squared, if you factor out a 2x, you have an x left over. And then a 10x, if you take away a 2x, if you factor it out, well, 10 divided by 2 is a 5. The x gets removed. So that's actually your final answer right there. Notice there's no need for me to do the x method. And the reason why is because the x method is reserved for trinomials. Okay, trinomials. This is a binomial. It has 2 terms only. Okay, 2x squared is one term. The negative 10x is the other term. But all the other ones we've done have had 3 terms. Okay? All right, so let's see. I told you just to do the even. So let's go to number 18. Number 18. So it's a negative 5xy squared minus 30xy minus 25x. Now this one, be very careful. You're going to notice there's a lot of little things we can take out. Okay? So one thing that I'm going to tell you we should remove right away is the negative in the front. Okay, I'm going to take a negative out. Do they all have a 5 in common? Yeah, they do. So let's take a 5 out. Do they all have an x in common? Yes, they do. So take that out. Do they have a y in common? No. So then the only thing I'm factoring out is a negative 5x. So let's go ahead and factor it out from every term. So if I take away a negative 5x from a negative 5xy squared, I end up with a y squared only. Now, since I did take out a negative, that means the next term is going to be a plus. Now, I'm going to take out a 5x from a 30xy, sorry. So what remains? A 6 what? 6y, okay, and then plus for the next term because I'm taking out a negative. A 25x divided by 5x is 5, so there we go. So notice the squiggly line is what I'm going to do the x method with, but I cannot forget my negative 5x. That's going to be put in at the very end. So let's go ahead and do the x method for this. I'm going to write down my a, b, and c. So I know that these are y variables, but it doesn't change the way we do the work. It might change the way the answer looks. So a is 1, b is 6, and c is 5. So 1 times 5, right? 8 times c is 5, and b is 6. So what numbers do I put on the sides? A 5 and a 1, both positive? All right, so plus 5 plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to put my 2 parentheses here. So 5 times 1 is 5. A 5 plus 1 is 6, so that looks good. I'm going to put a 5 right here, plus 5, plus 1. What variable is supposed to be put in there? A y, right? This one's a little different from the other ones because this time I factored something that had y terms in it. So y goes in there. And what do I put on the outside? All right, negative 5x, and there is your answer for that one. So I'll give you a little bit of time to write that out. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else. All right, so now the back side, I think these are the tougher ones. Okay. 20, 24, 22, 26. So you have 5. So let me see if I can do 2 of them for you guys, okay? I don't know if do I have time to do 2? Yeah, I probably do. All right. So are we good so far? Are we okay? Hopefully this is just kind of bringing back memories of what you did last year in geometry. But here are the ones that are tougher, okay? So I'm going to put number 20, but I'm going to put a star next to it, okay? Because these are the more challenging ones. So here we go. 3x squared minus 14x minus 24. So listen up, guys. Make sure that you hear this properly, okay? I cannot factor anything from this one, okay? And not only that, but you're going to notice something real quick. Let me write my ABCs, okay? Sorry here. Get rid of that. My A, my B, and my C. A is 3. B is negative 14. This is negative 24. Notice something, guys, that's really different. You see that A term? every single time up to now, A has always been 1. But what happens if A isn't a 1? Okay, that's when a little something weird occurs with the problem. So let me show you what happens when A is not a 1. So I'm going to put that right here. What happens if A does not equal 1? Okay, because that's going to be the whole back page. 5 problems on this. Actually, no, 4 problems on it. No, it's 5 actually. So I'm going to do 2, maybe leave you with 2 left. So check this out. This is what's going to happen. You're still going to do all the work the way you normally would. Okay, don't freak out. 3 times negative 24, that's a negative 72. And then a negative 14 here. Okay, so that goes on the bottom. Let me put that in red. I've been doing that in red. Let me just keep it. Yeah, so negative 72, negative 14. Because 3 times negative 24, that's a 12, so 72. And then we get our negative 14. So what 2 numbers? This one's a little tougher. Right? So how do we figure it out? So this is what I would tell you. You're going to get your 72, and you're going to say it's 1 times 72, 2 times 36, right? 3 times what? What do we get? 3 times 24. All right, so you guys with me so far? I'm writing down the factors. Does 72, can you divide 72 by 4? No. No? What about by 6? So it'll be 1. Yeah, it's going to be by 12. Okay. Anything else? By 7, by 8? Well, 8 and 9, right? So, are those all the factors? 4 goes...
18 and 4.
Yeah, 18 and 4. We missed the 4, guys. So, 4 and 18 as well. And if you don't mind, let me rewrite them in order, okay? I like putting them in order for a reason. So 6, 12, 8, 9. All right. So check this out. Listen up, listen up. So you have to look at all of our factors, and you ask yourself which one of those give you a 14. Notice that one, if you subtract 18 minus 4, it gives you a 14, right? None of the other ones do. You can't add them or subtract them to 14. So we got to use a 4 and an 18. Which one is positive? Which one is negative? The 4 is positive. The 8 is negative. Now, here's the tricky part, guys. The fact that I had to make that list of factors is not the tricky part. That's sometimes what has to happen. The tricky part is this. Since the number in the very front of the problem is a 3x squared, then you have to, and this is something that's going to be brand new, you have to divide your factors by that a term. You guys remember doing that?
Yeah.
Okay? That only happens when your a term is not a 1. So you have to divide. Now notice, this does not divide, so I'm just going to circle it, okay? You can't divide that. The other one you could. What's negative 18 divided by 3? Negative 6. So this is my next factor. Okay? So, if I can, let me just go up here really quick. So the reason why this happens, okay, is because of this. If this was a 1, then this wouldn't be happening, this division stuff. Okay? But since it's a 3, I said, what happens if A is not 1? Right? The fact that we had to factor 72 to figure out 14 is not what happens because that's not a 1. That's just sometimes that happens because this number is big and this number is small and we got to figure out factors that'll work. So that's normal. Okay? But at the very end, when we had our plus 4 and our minus 18, we could just say we're done, but the thing is, if you have an A equal to 3, not a 1, you have to divide out. So this is what happens when you do that, okay? So you're going to write your 2 parentheses. Notice I'm going to make them kind of big here. And I'm going to put my positive 4/3 and my minus 6 like that. I'm still going to use my letter of x, but you can't leave fractions. So I'm not sure how your teachers taught this to you guys last year, but I always tell people bottoms up for this, okay? Get that 3 and put it right there. Okay, take the bottom and move it up. All right, so this will actually be 3x plus 4 times x minus 6. And that's your answer for that problem. So if you have a fraction, you move the denominator to the front. Okay? So if you end up with the fraction, move the denominator to the front. So I do have enough time to do one more. I'd like to do 2 of these hard ones for you guys, and then you just get 3 to do at home. Okay? So let's look at number 22. So I know we're kind of going long on the lesson, but again, I am doing homework, so I hope you guys don't mind me doing your homework. All right, so number 22. I'm going to do this one a little bit faster just because I want to make sure we don't end when the bell rings, okay? Because I know some of you guys still got to show me your notes. So here we go. Do they have anything in common? Yeah, they do. What number do they have in common? A 2. So let me take it out. That'll be 2x squared plus 9x plus 4. Now the squiggly line is what I'm going to focus on, but do not forget that 2. Okay? Now notice my A term is a 2. It's not a 1. So I'm going to end up with the same little issue that I wound up with the other one, where I am going to have to divide after I find my factors, okay? So let's do this. All right, 2 times 4, 8 times c, that's 8. And then 9 goes here. Well, this looks like it's going to be a lot easier to do. What 2 numbers should I use as my factors? 8 and 1, both positive? Yeah. Yeah, they should. Yeah, that'll work. And then I'm not going to just say, oh, and now my answer is, because again, my A value is a 2, which means I better divide. So let me divide out, okay? So I'm going to divide by 2, divide by 2. Now, 1 divided by 2 will not become any simpler, so I'm just going to circle it, okay? But 8 divided by 2 becomes a 4, so that's a positive 4. So let me write my parentheses here. I get a plus 4 here, a plus half here. What letter am I using for this? My x's, right? What can I not forget? The 2 in the front, the thing in yellow, right? The yellow highlighted. And then since I have a fraction, I got to take it from the bottom up, right? So this 2 is going to go right there. So let me write 2x plus 4, 2x plus 1. Now, sometimes people ask me, is it okay if I write like 2 times 2x plus 1 times x plus 4? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's all multiplied together, so it doesn't make a difference.